want to talk about a classic case of intentional oblivion or scholars putting blinders on their eyes, this is a classic example. Now, this book that I ordered, the Iodine Psalter that I ordered from Amazon.com, which is actually the Canterbury Psalter that does not have the mushroom images in it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That Psalter was reprinted in full, and it's very amazing to compare it because it has the same scenes, it has the same structure as the Paris manuscript. It repeats the same scenes over and over again, but with no trace of any psychedelic plant or mushroom in it at all. But there is one chapter in this book, which anyone can buy, where a scholar, and I believe it's a Belgian scholar actually, a woman from somewhere here in the University of Ghent, I think, is comparing the Canterbury Psalter without mushrooms to the Paris Iodine Psalter.
Yeah.
And she goes meticulously into the imagery, and she, you know how scholars are, she explains the scroll work, and she says it came from this school, and it came from that school, and she goes into all of these details, and she does not mention once that mushrooms are depicted in the Paris Iodine Psalter.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
My God. Jeez.
And so there is a complete, I don't know what you would say, there's a rule of silence, and there's a complete bafflement on the part of, of scholars to deal with this material.
Yeah. Huh. So, do you think that there is any connection, the fact that this comes out of Canterbury, that this is has something more to do with some of the more ancient religions of England and the Norse? The Celtic
I don't know that much about the tradition of Canterbury. I know much more about Glastonbury and that part of England.
Yeah.
I do know that, of course, psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, grow in great plenitude in southern England. They grow over toward Glastonbury and over toward Wales and in that area, but I suspect that they also grow in the rich fields around, Canterbury and that region.
Yeah.
I don't really know. It's baffling. I haven't been able to find a clue on it at all. My guess is that whoever was in charge of illustrating the manuscript wanted to put in something that was really heretical. It was heretical to depict these scenes in the Bible in this way. And yet they managed to get away with it up to a certain point. Now, of course, this brings up a subject that we covered quite thoroughly in a previous part of our talk here. Some people say that there were members of the Catholic Church and the Christian Church who forbid these natural sacraments to the people, but kept them to themselves.
Yeah.
And so one would tend to think, well, maybe that was the case here. I don't really know. I just think somehow, I get a strange feeling that this got snuck in there somehow. And that as soon as it was realized by the people who commissioned it what was being done, I'm so amazed they didn't destroy it.
Well, exactly, yeah.
It's amazing that they didn't destroy it because it is so shocking to see page after page, and some of these pages, the illustrations of the mushrooms, there's one page which I've illustrated. I'm going to send you the JPEGs of these so you can post a couple of them on Red Ice Creations. The Sermon on the Mount, in which the figure of Jesus is standing on a mountain of mushrooms.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
And there's even more beyond that. I mean, there's a piece on the site on MedHistory.org. It's called Mystic Jesus, Hanged Man and Dancer. So the first day that I went to, I've been now to the Paris, to the National Library in Paris about 4 times to look at this microfilm, and I'm going to see if I can get permission to examine the actual manuscript itself. Maybe then I'll get a chance to put some questions to the expert,
Yeah.
whoever the expert is. But as I was looking through it, I found in addition to the mushroom images, for instance, I'll give you another example. We all know the story from the New Testament that after the baptism of Jesus, he went into the desert where he was tempted by the devil, right?
Yeah.
The way this is illustrated in the Paris Iodine Psalter is, you see Jesus standing actually in a forest of mushrooms, and they're the tall, thin mushrooms with the small, round heads. Therefore, they are the psilocybe type.
Yeah, exactly.
Small, round heads, not the liberty caps, but the round heads. And standing with him is a shamanic figure, which is supposed to be the devil, which is actually a shaman wearing antlers horns. And they are discussing mushrooms together.
That's pretty interesting, eh?
Yeah.
Huh.
And so I would say that it seems to me that this information, which is not even coded, we're not talking here about like Da Vinci Code, this is encoded. It's not coded, it's just right there.
Right there, yeah.
That this information must have been put in there by people who had a deep knowledge of the ancient mushroom cults in Europe. And somehow wanted to bring that knowledge out again and actually display it in a Christian context, but without necessarily saying, well, Christianity is basically a mushroom religion, because Christianity in its organizational form, as we discussed in the previous part of the talk, forbids these visionary plants.
Exactly. Well, and even if we look at the image that you just talked about, this is, it's a little bit like the, as you write on your website, the shaman devil there is kind of is tempting Jesus.
Yes, that's right.
Here we go, take this. It's like they're portraying this from a viewpoint of evil, right there. Isn't that the case? What do you think?
Well, not necessarily, because there are a couple of other manuscripts of the same period, illuminated manuscripts, that have mushroom scenes in them. And we're all familiar, in Christian art with the artistic theme of the expulsion from Eden, remember?
Yeah.
So what we generally see is what? An angel with a sword, or some kind of person, or perhaps God himself as an old man in a cloud, holding up his fist and shaking his fist, and we see Adam and Eve shamefully exiting the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And so it's very clear from that Christian art that there is an expulsion and a condemnation, and that someone has done something wrong. But I don't see that kind of imagery being used in the Paris Iodine Psalter. It seems to me that the shamanic figure with antlers, who is discussing mushrooms with Jesus, is not necessarily tempting him, but they're just like a couple of guys discussing mushrooms.
Yeah, that might be
so
the case.
What I'm saying in short is that I don't find a condemning attitude in the Iodine Psalter regarding these, but there are a couple of other less-known psalters that have a few mushroom images in them, in which they are clearly condemning the eating of the mushrooms. So there is a difference there. So anyway, if I might describe a little bit more of what I found in this manuscript.
Please go ahead.
Well, I was scrolling down, and of course, every time I went through another frame, my jaw just opened a little bit wider. So I'm leaning against this booth with my mouth hanging open, just watching these images come up and come up. And then at one point, I see this most remarkable image of the crucifixion, in which it shows the figure of Jesus dressed in a blue robe, which is reminiscent of the blue mushrooms that you see prolifically throughout the Psalter. But he's hung upside down. An inverted crucifixion. Now, if you know the tarot deck, there is a card in the tarot deck called the Hanged Man.
Yeah, indeed.
In which the Hanged Man is hanging upside down. And for instance, in Crowley's, in my article on the website, Mystic Jesus, Hanged Man, and Dancer, I use an image of the Crowley tarot card, which also has a blue background. And it's the blue, it's the mystic blue, you see, the blue of Krishna, the blue of that is remarked by many people who have mystic visions. And so it's sort of like saying, well, the crucifixion took place, but it wasn't really what you thought it was. It was more of a mystical event and not actually an act of torture and suffering as you're supposed to think. So this in itself, this image of the inverted crucifixion is absolutely astounding and really defies, Christian teaching.
That's very interesting.
So then you go further on, and there are some scenes in this Paris Édouin Psalter of the Last Supper, which of course is a great subject now that everyone has been, reading the Da Vinci Code and got sick and tired of that.
Sure.
And the problem with the Da Vinci Code, of course, is that when you see the Leonardo's painting of the Last Supper, of course it's very, very destroyed, and it's very decayed, and a lot of what is supposed to be in there, you kind of have to squint and you have to imagine it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like that in the Paris Édouin Psalter. There are two images of the Last Supper, which are quite different. One of them shows the 12 disciples at the table, and it shows in front of the table a man on his knees, and Jesus pointing down to this man. The man has a helmet, and the man is touching the feet of Jesus, and I suspect that would be an image of Joseph of Arimathea.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite typical, that's quite conventional. We do expect to see that because that belongs to traditional Christianity.
Right.
There are no mushroom omelets shown on the table where they have their cups and knives.
Right.
But there is Joseph of Arimathea. But then, a little further down, a few pages further on, there is exactly the same scene, but instead of Joseph of Arimathea at the foot of the table, there is a woman with long hair. And she's kneeling and she's holding up a kind of bowl in which Jesus is, as it were, touching some substance that is in the bowl. Some kind of object that's in the bowl. Now, I would guess that this is Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased to see that the Paris Psalter, while it would show Joseph of Arimathea, it would also show Mary Magdalene in the Last Supper scene. So I scrolled down a little more, and then I was completely unprepared for what I saw next. And people who are listening to this interview can go to Mystic Jesus on Metahistory, and they'll see it's the last image. I saw an image of Jesus dressed in a red robe, dancing with a woman. He's holding the scarf that goes around her body. The scarf winds around her body as if it were a serpent. And he's holding the end of the scarf as if it's shaped like the head of a serpent.
Yeah.
So the woman is kind of like a kundalini figure.
Yeah.
Her garment is transparent, and you can see her body. You can see the curves of her body. And even though her hair is brown, and Mary Magdalene was known for being a redhead. This is a traditional thing.
Sure.
And even though her hair is brown, she is wearing on her head a red cap.
Yeah, it looks like a Phrygian cap or something. Almost.
It looks like a Phrygian cap.
Yeah. Huh.
Now, this is the only image that I can cite you in Christian art that shows the figure supposedly to be Jesus or Christ dancing with a half-naked woman in a transparent dress that looks like a snake.
Oh my God! Yeah, this is quite something else. I mean, and this might be a good place also to get into a little bit of the sexual themes in regards to all of this, because it's. I mean, would you say that this connects a little bit with some of the tantric arts of India that we've seen? I mean, is there connection here between these kinds of teachings?
Well, I would say that certainly this is the most tantric image that exists in all of Christian art. And I find it remarkable that this tantric image has slipped into this manuscript, that Mary Magdalene is depicted almost nakedly under this transparent robe, that her body looks like a serpent, and that it is, wrapped in this serpentine scarf. And I think that there is some extremely powerful message here regarding the heresy about Magdalene. And as you know, the basic heresy about Magdalene, and I've written about this, I disagree that Magdalene was the wife of Jesus and that they had children, and that the most closely guarded secret in Western civilization is that there was a bloodline descending from Jesus. I totally disagree with this because the Gnostics